speaker, eminent scientist, and Professor Mallar, who is presently working at Tecnológico de Monterrey, Mexico. Professor Roy did his graduation and post-graduation in physics from University of Calcutta, India, followed by another post-graduation in environmental science from University of Nottingham, UK, as a British physicist scholar. Thereafter, he did his doctoral research in the area of silicon nanostructure and their applications, and several the School of Material Science and Engineering of the erstwhile Bengal Engineering and Science University, Shibpur, known as IIEST, Shibpur, as a faculty member for 16 years. In January this year, he was joined the School of Engineering and Science of Technology de Monterrey, Mexico, as a professor. His preliminary research interest is on experimental and theoretical investigation on semiconductor and hybrid nanostructure, which focus on understanding their size, dependent optical and transport properties. I don't want to go further for his publication and other. Now he will be delivered his lecture, challenges and opportunities in online higher education. Please, sir, proceed for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Borman. As usual, I will thank the organizer, but ask everyone if I'm perfectly audible or not. If I am audible, then it would be great if you can just type in yes. Okay. Thank you so much. I would also like to project my screen. So there is someone who's presenting. So if that presentation is stopped, I can project my screen so that you can see to some, look at one PowerPoint presentation, a very short one, which I have made for this purpose. Okay. So my sincere thanks to Dr. Das, Dr. Borman for, I don't remember the last time when I was speaking to almost 250 odd people and all involved in higher education in India. So, there is some issues in
okay, now
someone's microphone is probably on.
Listen, there is the thundering is going on. So,
hello.
Right.
Someone's microphone is on. So.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So as I was saying that I don't remember the last time that I spoke to more than 250, almost 250 people and all involved in higher education. That itself is quite, rewarding and challenging. So as you can see that the title of what I'm going to present for the next 20-25 minutes reads as Challenges and Opportunities in Online Higher Education. But before I proceed, I have to present some perspective which begins with an apology. The apology is due to the fact that principal a few minutes ago said that you'd listen to experts, but I'm not an expert on education. As Dr. Bondman was reading out a brief bio sketch, you could have made out that my training is as a physicist, and I'm doing research on size-dependent properties of materials, experience whatsoever on education. Education by itself is a specialization. There are many experts on education working on this particular situation worldwide, social scientists, and people with, umpteen in dealing with this particular type of situations. So what I intend to do when I got this invitation, and reluctantly I kind of did, is to speak on certain experiences. So my position is very similar to your positions. I'm a professor, just like you, dealing with students in this kind of situation you are thrust into. We don't know how to react. So I'll be talking from experiences and from common sense. Now that is a danger, because if we have a problem with our health, we don't go to patients, we go to doctors. But it's important to look at the patient's narrative as well. So just like we all are, we are all in the same boat. We are the patients of this situation. So there are doctors. So I'll try to build up a patient's narrative along with you all. I go into the main aspects of this talk, I should be very clear. Subjective position, my emotional position, is rather traditional. I've been teaching for more than 16, 17 years now, and till now, for various reasons, I have always preferred, personally, the traditional methods of chalk and talk presentation, using a chalkboard or a whiteboard at the best. I have used, PowerPoint projections and certain models at certain cases, but that is not the area where I have focused. So, emotionally, I'm traditional. Now, if a person is biased towards a particular kind of action, then the logical discourse also tend to follow that action. So I'll try to, unbias myself as much as I can in this, discourse. Well, we all know the background, that the response to this COVID-19 outbreak, which has left all of us kind of in a perplexing situation, that we all had to stay home. So the impact on higher education has been immense, we know that. But if I have to take out all the superficial stuff and find out what is the main agenda in this, is essentially, it was a shift from classroom to online mode. Essentially, that is the crux. Now we are trying to deal with this situation. So, in a single word, it should be a digital drift of our whole education. So the question is, how do we respond to that? Now, if we think that this is just a short-term issue, as long as this threat will remain, we don't know that. Maybe 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 1 year. And then it will go and we'll jump back to the old normal. Now, by this time, everyone kind of have accepted that we are not going to jump back to the old normal. So, even if this is a fixed time project, maybe 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, we don't know. A large part of the world, including the United States, is kind of jumping back to the, there's no lockdown, universities are gradually opening, offices are opening, people are out on the streets. Europe, large part of Europe is kind of back to that state. But still, people in higher education, they're convinced that whatever we experienced during the last 3 months or 4 months and what we are going to experience in the coming 2 months is going to have a very, very long-term impact on overall higher education. So it's not just a question of interim measure. So we need to look at it at greater details. Now, as I said, and as you know that my expertise is in physics, but in dealing with such situation, you cannot do any analysis. I'm sure that all of you will agree to this, in abstraction. We cannot do this analysis in abstraction. Because such a shift, such a major jump from one mode to another mode, has very serious economic, social, cultural aspects. And to put every analysis in that economic, social, and cultural context is the task of a trade. On every scope of being myopic. There's still someone who's probably the microphone is on. Someone says that I'm not audible. While they
So you are audible. I am trying to find out who put microphone on. Please.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So,
yeah, Mr. Sufal Vishwas, please mute your audio. Mr. Sufal Vishwas, please mute your audio.
okay, I think I can proceed. It's reasonably quiet atmosphere. So the questions which all of us are kind of poised is first is how do we cope with this digital drift? The digital drift has happened. It's a reality. And we have no choice. At this particular juncture, we have no choice. So either we drift along with this digital drift worldwide, or we are left behind. So how do we cope with this situation? I think individually and collectively, we are all facing this cardinal question that how to cope with this digital drift.
Sorry, sir, I am disturbing you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes,
actually,
please.
Actually, your slide is not projected on the big screen.
Now
I can see your face on the big screen.
Can you? But it says that I'm sharing, and it asks me to stop. Can you see now the slide?
No, actually, I can
No?
see your face on the big screen and your slide on small.
Let me just. Can you see now?
Yes, now it is. Oh,
Huh?
it was coming, but someone else is presenting
Now?
Yeah, now it is coming. Yes.
Sufal Vishwas,
Fine.
please stop your audio.
Okay. So if there is
Okay,
any
thank you.
problem, if you can't see or if you can't hear, just interrupt and let me know. Okay? Fine.
Please, sir, proceed.
Thank you. So that's the cardinal question, how to cope with this digital drift. And in this last 3 or 4 months, something has already come up that which is in the pedestrian discussion, that we have experienced a lot of new things in this online shift to the online mode. And the mode that will emerge post-COVID has to be a hybrid mode, where we will borrow a lot of things from what we are practicing right now, do away with many old traditional aspects, and at the same time probably integrate a part of what had been in practice before, the traditional mode of teaching. So this is where I'll try to focus, right? Along with certain pragmatic aspects of how to deal with say lab classes right now, how to deal with exams right now, certain aspects of those questions. Fine. Now we all know the impact the impact of the response to COVID is global. There is absolutely no doubt about it. This pie chart, which I have picked up from a report prepared by the International Association of Universities, which is an organization under the UNESCO, it shows that 60% of higher education institutes worldwide, they were forced to stop and completely close the institute and go to online modes. That's a worldwide scenario. About 30% said that their institute is partly open with major disruptions, but teaching was completely online. A small 10% said that it's kind of usual, but some containment measures are on. A very small 1% globally, this is a global review report, a 1% where institute was functioning as before. Now, interesting about this report, this global survey report published by International Association of Universities, at the very beginning, at the very preface, they mentioned that this report is biased because they had sent in a questionnaire to a very, very large number of universities trying to cover the entire globe, almost all the countries. But they got response primarily from the US and the European institutes. So which kind of shows that even to questionnaires sent by the International Association of Universities, there are many countries, many universities, primarily in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, which couldn't even respond to these questionnaires. So we can understand this situation from this global survey report, that if institute as a whole or countries, they can't send their online report in this time, then how would they respond to this complete digital drift under this situation? But this kind of summarizes the impact which has been truly global. But now, I would like to draw your attention to another very, very important article which was published by the World Economic Forum. The title of the article kind of speaks for itself. It says that how COVID-19 is driving a long overdue revolution in education. Now that is very significant. So it says in 3 bulleted points just after the title that the pandemic has forced universities to bring their courses online. And it says that this is just one step along the road to a new educational paradigm. And they expect a new model to emerge once COVID-19 has passed. So what do we understand from this? Now, World Economic Forum is a very important forum worldwide. We all agree, we all know that. So this online shift in education and in higher education in particular, we know that it has been thrust upon us because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But this was long overdue. It is not that the COVID-19 has created the situation and we reluctantly, unwillingly, we have jumped into this. The policymakers worldwide had been thinking that this is probably, or this kind of hybrid mode should evolve, and it was long overdue. So COVID-19 in that sense is incidental. It has fostered in this kind of mode. And under this extreme situation, when almost the entire globe was under a lockdown, we had this completely skewed only online, teaching methods. But post-COVID-19, as everyone foresees, a hybrid model is due to evolve. And many are quoting the famous Margaret Thatcher Tina factor, that is, there is no alternative. I will not go into that because that's not my forte, that's not my area. But a question is, striking question remains that did we really look for alternatives before this? We had a situation where students and faculty members had to all stay home. We were locked down, so we were forced to adopt certain kind of online education. Prior to that, we were all sitting comfortable in our old traditional style of teaching. I don't really see much of a discourse which kind of now involves almost 250 people. We are talking, we are thinking, we are brainstorming. This, I guess, is undoubtedly one of the positive aspects of the changes during the last 3-4 months. That we are brainstorming, we are thinking, we are putting in our 2 pencils to think what is in store, what can evolve, what was wrong with the system, where we can amend. So that's positive. But was there truly, on behalf of the policymakers, a search for alternatives? I don't really know about that. So that remains as a question which we have to look into later on. Okay, some specific questions which should be highlighted before we can proceed to some of the measures that we can take. The first very important question is, this situation has completely redefined the role of teachers. Just what we saw at the beginning of today's seminar, that we had a prolonged technical glitch, right? And many of us may not be, we were not asked to be equipped to deal with these technicalities. So who will educate the educators? So that's a big question. And this complete online shift kind of demands that we are all equally positioned with regards to handling these technicalities, which is not the case. And you cannot expect that a homogeneous mass of teachers, faculty members, who are all equally equipped to handle this digital challenge. We are not. So who will educate the educators? That's a very, very big question. There are measures, every institution, there are certain parent organizations at the national, international levels who are organizing courses. But then you cannot expect almost overnight the entire bunch of teachers and faculty members to reorient themselves. That is simply not possible. So there has to be a transition. There has to be some planned, programmed method to educate the educators, the faculty members, to handle this situation. Well, if we think that a major part of teaching, lectures, is going online, then another very important question which is now being confronted by people in academia is, do we really need real-time lectures? Why should we need real-time lectures? Say, I can talk from my subject's point of view. Say I'm teaching a course on physics, say quantum mechanics. Now there are hundreds of courses on quantum mechanics given by some of the stalwarts in the world. And they're excellent presentations. So why do I need to repeat? The basic structures of these courses is universal. And if there are, say, 10s or even 20 good courses, my job as a teacher would be to find out which of these presentations are best and which I should, ask my students to follow. And the advantage there is, we all know that a student can stop at any point of time, repeat, go back. We all know these advantages, right? So the learning capacities, the learning, the learning speed is not same for all students. So given this, off-time lectures, which they can stop, which they can run again and again, recorded lectures, they have a better chance to follow. So technically at least, if we have recorded lectures of the main courses, then the role of the teacher or a conventional lecturer is completely redefined, right? So we need to, advance these lectures, put some more meat into the lectures, put it in some perspective maybe. So what does it mean? In real terms, it means that a large number of lecturers, professors, they'll become redundant. Because if we look at the Indian reality, then a large number, overwhelming majority of people in higher education, their only job is to deliver lectures. So if that is redundant, so what will happen to this population? What will their job be? So that is a very, very big question, and we have to confront that. We cannot escape that question. Okay, another issue, as I said, which we also face, that out of control technical issues. Like I have today, they were struggling hard to get Professor Das online, but they could not for almost 1 hour. And naturally, a section of the audience who were waiting, we naturally, some of them became a bit impatient. But these are out of control technical issues. Do we have a measure in place? We don't know. A bit more specific question is how to take lab courses, where you need laboratory equipments, you need some hands-on training. How to do that? Is there an online alternative to that? Something close? You know, professions such as medicine, accountancy, law, they also need internships. Can there be an online alternative to internships? Another question which Dr. Das spoke a little while ago is how to conduct unseen exams. Because I know that in Indian context and in context of many other countries, exams are the most sacrosanct part of education. That is where a student is evaluated, stamped by some grades, and those grades act as sieve for the next layer. So if we can't conduct unseen exams, how to conduct? Because the students are individual, they're with all their gadgets, those who have them. So if there are questions, they can consult Google God. So how to conduct exam? So that's a very, very serious question which the present education system is facing. But as an aside, I would like to raise this question that what is the need of the kind of exam that we have? Well, you can say that that's a meaningless question at this stage. We need exams to grade. But why do we grade the students? Well, one, maybe an evaluation of how they have performed. But that's not the case, at least in India and worldwide. Education and grading are disconnected. Grading is primarily required so as to attach some numbers with that student, which will kind of decide whether the student go to the next course, next level, and where the student can go, in which institute. So as long as we have these kind of competitive situations, we cannot dream anything outside this in India or anywhere at this stage. We need grades. For that we need exams. So how to conduct them? Another question which many of my colleagues are asking is, online mode is very, very difficult in online mode to motivate the uninterested students. When we have an organic presence in a classroom, we can see the eyes, we can see their movements, the physicality, and we know who's uninterested. There are thousands of different ways of trying to motivate the uninterested. But again, some people are raising this question that if someone is really, really disinterested, why should he or she do that? Because higher education is definitely not meant for all. Someone who's interested, someone who want to pursue that subject should do higher education. The rest are kind of forced to, because without higher education, they won't get a job. But higher education essentially should not be for a job. It should be for education. So there are questions which we had not faced, which we had left behind our back. Oh, those are remote questions. Those questions are kind of fairy tale questions which we need not bother about. These questions are coming to the fore, which in my opinion is indeed very important. So we are faced with these questions. We are asking something or questions which maybe a few months back was absurd. So this is important. Now, behind these specific questions, there's some broader issues. Now, we cannot escape those broader issues, and we all know this, particularly in India, particularly, colleges in the districts, they are all facing it. And what is that broader issue? The broader issue primarily concerns with access and the digital divide this access is producing. But when I was looking for data prior to this, when I was preparing for this presentation, I was quite surprised. In India, at present, almost 420 million people have access to smartphones. Now that's a startling fact. That's more the number of people who have access to proper sanitation. So 420 million people in 2020 have access to smartphones. That's not the total number of smartphones which are sold. The total number of smartphone owners is about 130 million. So one phone is used by more than one person, though it's sometimes called an iPhone. They're used by you or many. So 420 million people, and it's expected to grow to 490 by 2022. So that's not a small amount. And 560 million people in India reportedly have internet access, which is also a very, very big amount. And if I look at the UGC provided data of the number of students involved in higher education, you know, in 2016, that's the data I could get, it was about 28 million, which in 2020 has grown up to nearly 34 million people who are enrolled in some branch or the other of higher education. And out of that, overwhelming majority are enrolled in arts subject, right? Followed by science and then engineering and others. So the total number of students is about, but that's, many people say that most of the students who are in higher education, an overwhelming majority, they have access to internet. They have access to some kind of device. But that's a very, very strange logic, which means that even if I consider 10%, 5% who do not have access, what about them? Is education about a majority or a democracy in this sense, where even if it is 5%, we can leave them out? Who gives the right to the rest 95% to leave out that 5%? We don't know. From there, we could have got some of the brightest or some of the most deserving, some of the most enthusiastic students. So just by the sheer logic of majority doesn't allow us to leave even a handful section. Now that presents what is globally known as the digital divide. Digital divide is often compared with the analogy of this metro rail, right? Which was first started in London, and it's a very famous statement which is called "mind the gap." There's announcement everywhere in London metro rails that mind the gap. It's a symbol of London. And also in India, we see that in Calcutta, where you have metro rail, in Delhi, in Bombay. So there's a train which everyone boards to reach to some destination. And there are people standing in the platform who wants to board the train to go to some destination. So those who are in the platform are all willing. They want to go. But in between the train and the platform, there's a gap. And if even a small fraction of the people who are waiting in the platform to board the train do not have access to the train. Say, for example, Stephen Hawking. If there is no access for wheelchair, then Stephen Hawking would never have been able to board the train. So maybe a majority of the people, they can simply walk in, but a small minority, we might be leaving out the Stephen Hawking. Who knows? So affordability, the division between the haves and the have-nots, those who do not have this facility. And as I said, that 23.8% of the Indian households have internet access. So this whole logic, whole idea, this argumentative scheme that higher education is based on majority's affordability, in my opinion, is completely wrong. So what this is doing is further a step ahead. It is even more marginalizing the people who are already marginalized. Now, other than this, division between haves and have-nots, division on the basis of class, on economy, it is also enhancing other kinds of divides. For example, the rural-urban divide. We all know that the connectivity is much better in the urban areas than the rural areas. The number of households in rural India with internet access, it's much smaller to the number of households with internet access in urban India. I saw a photograph one day in one of the websites that some teacher in Bankura district was sitting on top of a tree with his laptop and trying to connect to his students because that is the only place where he can have access. So this is further increasing the rural-urban divide. So that is another aspect which we need to think very carefully. We cannot escape the gender division further, enhancing the marginalization of women. By virtue, a simple, fact which I think everyone will accept, that all women across the globe, they have this extra burden of doing housework. So if a man and a woman, say a husband and a wife, both of them are at home and both of them teach, then naturally the wife will have more work to do because she has to do all the housework. So she has to take classes and attend to the children and do cooking. So going out and teaching was an escape. She could go. She could devote that time for teaching, for academics, for education. But now it's a double burden. And also, I mean, statistics says that lesser number of women has access to internet compared to men. So this kind of division is bound to, create further marginalization of women. Another less talked about issue is the division between mental and physical labor, which is always there. I mean, we always have this hierarchy that someone who's doing mental work is higher up in the hierarchy compared to those who do physical. We always despise people who do physical work. Even in academics, it's easy to understand that someone doing work in a computer is held in higher esteem than someone who's cleaning the road. That we know. But even in academics, you see, in India, we are still producing great theoreticians. But we are sadly lagging behind in experiments. And I think it has something to do with this kind of divide, this kind of mindset. Because experiment is looked down upon, because you have to do something physically. I'll give you a simple example which all of you will understand. That all these entrance exams, which kinds of opens the door to the heaven for students, say IIT exams, joint entrance exams, medical exams, all these entrance exams, they're purely based on theoretical evaluation. There's no experimental exams. So what does it show? That we are already biased towards mental work. Physical work is looked down upon. And undoubtedly, this complete shift to digital world is going to further, sharpen this divide. Well, we cannot escape this issue of digital security and freedom. We know that whenever we, open an account or whatever we do, we are continuously being tracked. So any app will want to know your location, your contracts, every detail. Now, some of you might say we don't bother. Why do we care? Because yes, we don't care. We have no alternatives. We share all our details with all these apps. But the question is, this is skewed. It's one-sided. Who has the data? We don't have data about the others. But all these, all these companies, these big giants, they have data, and we know what has happened with that. So what if I want my privacy? What if I do not want to share my data? Do I have any option? No. We simply do not have option but to submit. We have to submit. So that's subversive. I'm kind of forced to share all my details. And think about this access. Now I can see, if I go to the other mode, I can see what's happening inside your house. What type of clothes are hanging in your clotheslines. These are all visible when we are giving access to the videos. Now there may be people who's living in, and there are so many of Indian students who live in environments which they wouldn't like to disclose to the public. Maybe I was hearing someone when probably Dr. Barman was speaking, there was some loudspeakers playing outside his home. So that disturbs. So who guarantees this situation? So without an overall change, these kind of implementations, particularly in countries like India, I think can be absolutely dangerous for individuals and society at large. And, to end with these problems, getting away from home was freedom for many, right? Particularly, we know that for people living in slums, in rural India, particularly for the girl child, getting away from home was freedom. And that was the place where we socially mixed, where we got educated. So that's giving rise to numerous mental health issues, or cutting across class, caste, gender, everything. It's giving rise to mental health issues. So these needs to be addressed. So, education is, which I strongly feel is just not imparting a skill. you're trying to impart a skill, teaching just classical mechanics or quantum mechanics to a student. It's a holistic experience. And if I go back, I think I have learned the most from my friends, peers, and students. So it was through the social interaction. So without this interaction, the larger goal of education is completely lost. We may learn some skills, but education as a whole suffers. Okay, with this kind of, the dominating background that I've said, let me give you some idea about the digital solutions which we can look into. There is absolutely no doubt about the advantages of digital mode, which I was talking in the very beginning, that either from the perspective of the student or from the teacher. I did not talk about the perspective of the teacher. Say, I have been teaching for the last 16, 17 years, right? So if I'm teaching the same course, say I'm teaching a course on, let's make it simple, say I'm teaching a course on classical mechanics. So in the last 16 years, there hasn't been any change in classical mechanics, at least in the course. There's no new development, not major development in classical mechanics, and the basic courses remain same. So as a teacher, if I have to teach the same course for 16 years, that can be very boring. I wouldn't like to do that. So if I have an option, to upload my course in a form, and then every now and then, whenever I feel like I made some modification, that is also beneficial for the teacher, not only for the student, who can stop, who can look at the course at his or her suitable time. So that is definitely an option which can be adopted. Now, I think all of us know about Google Classrooms. Google is by far the most popular. Microsoft Team. But there are some other which are excellent, online tools. I would say digital tools for classroom teaching. A couple of them like Panopto and Adobe Connect. You can use them for, I have the websites, I can share these presentations, so you can have a look. And I'm sure in the coming few months and years, of course, we will see many, many new improved versions of this, which will address, that is why it's very important to have the patient's narrative, where these new innovations will try to address the problems that we pose. We may not be doctors, we don't know the solutions, but if we can define our problems, then those who are experts who are designing these things, they can find out, address them. Adobe Connect, in my opinion, is better for tutorial and Viva, which one of my colleagues corroborated. Now, tunability of the interactive character is something which we need to learn. Say there are digital platforms where if I want, I can keep my identity under shadows, under cover. I may not disclose my identity. These are the broadcast platforms. There's one broadcast in WhatsApp which I've written, WhatsApp broadcast. If you look at the WhatsApp app and go to the three dots upstairs, you can, keep your identity undisclosed and send messages to a group. So there are broadcast versions. You cannot interact, they cannot talk to you, but you can send messages one hand. So we need to explore more broadcast versions. We need to explore versions where there is some amount of interaction. So interaction should be tunable, with whom I want to do, with whom I don't want to do, and they're already being provided by some of these websites. Another very important aspect which I think as teachers, particularly I think the crowd that I'm addressing right now is very important, is to have online materials on vernacular languages, which we sadly, we lack, particularly in Bangla. That's what I know, there may be many other languages where students are comfortable. So maybe immediately we can't have excellent books in vernacular languages, but we can upload lectures by people who are interested, so that students are not intimidated by the language. Language doesn't, which I guess to many students is a formidable barrier that they have to cross, speaking, talking, and understanding, particularly English. And this also gives the teacher a huge amount of scope for personal attention. Because if I'm not, completely worried of taking 25 lectures a week, they're uploaded. So now, even if a class consists of 100, I will have the time and scope to attend to individual questions. The students can, come to me individually, and I can attend them. So that addresses a major problem in countries like India. Now, coming to the penultimate slide, of course, is about exams and labs, which I think is haunting primarily the administrators. How do we do exams? How do we conduct exams? So what is the first challenge? The first challenge is how to set questions. Because Google is God. Whatever questions we said, Google will find out the answer. To set questions which cannot be Googled easily is a huge challenge on teacher. And I'm sure it's not possible for most of the teachers to set questions which a student cannot Google. So that's a major shift. Now, it is also questioning the efficacy of the existing exam system, or what it existed 3 months before. What did we essentially, test? We tested memory, whether the student knows the statement of a law or an equation or some, argument. What are the reasons for the fall of the Mughal Empire? Memorize 1, 2, 3. What is the need for this? These are questions which we are facing. We have raised these questions, but those who are undercover, we continued with the old system. But these are questions that why do we need that? They're already in the public domain. They're in public knowledge. Why do we need to memorize them? We need to know that to develop our own argumentative skills. We need to know these, reasons, everything, blah, 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 to develop our own acumen so that we can analyze something new. So these questions are now real questions. Do we need exams? Okay, we can set projects which are not easily found in Google. But there's something called contract cheating. What is that? So you give me a project, I'm a student, immediately I will go to this website. There are many others. I've given that website, chegg.com. I will send the project to them and they will prepare a report for me and I'll give them some money. So that is institutionalized crime. And it's very, very difficult to check. Anywhere, if I have online access, even if you displace me from my house and put me in an exam center and I'm giving an online exam, and I can access those websites, I'll send the question paper to them and they will solve it and give it to me. And there are hired experts who are solving questions for students. So that's a big problem. Turnitin. I guess many of you probably know, which is the plagiarism check software. So if I submit a project which is already there, it's copied and pasted, Turnitin will give a report. So I think many of you might be using Turnitin. It's already in use in India in many institutes. So what this present scenario has put in question is the need, efficacy, viability of exams, which in my opinion is very good. I don't know whether you're aware that Cambridge, which I came to know from one of my friends, Cambridge has adopted something which is spectacular. They have completely done away with marking, at least for this phase. They have not declared what they will do after this, but they're not marking the students. They're giving some grades, but they're just not marking the students. So, if we look into the true spirit of education, which we never faced before, we were shy to address those questions, is now surfacing. The efficacies, the needs of exams are now big questions. I do not have the answer, but these are questions which the experts need to address if they have some mechanism of, building an online virtual exam system. Laboratories, another thing in which I think I can help you a little bit, that there are some online digital labs. One of them, the first one, which is O-Labs, which is an effort by the Indian Ministry of Electronics and IT. You can register there and do several online labs. And believe me, most of these online labs kind of do everything, and it can be done. The last part is where you need to go and assemble and put it and make it into a device or something, your lab setup. A lot can be done, a lot more than what we can think. We can have a feel of something which is like a real lab. And then, of course, at some stage, we need to go and assemble. But this potential of what we can do using simulations, using several online programs was at least I did not know the potential of these things. And I'm sure that many of my colleagues will share that they did not know about the potential of these things. So these potentials should be harnessed to its complete ability, right? To its complete potential, which we have not done. And it can be further improved. So there will, of course, remain a stage where we need to do it finally at some location using some, parts and machines in the real time and in the real space. But in the virtual space, we can proceed a very, very long distance. And here are some very, very important websites that I've shown you. One is that of Government of India, the Global Online Laboratory Consortium, where you can do a lot of things can be done free of charge. The Virtual Physical Laboratory, which is a UK government project, they also allow you to do a lot of experiments. Of course, I'm speaking from the point of view of my subject, from physics. And there are private, organizations which charge you a lot and help you to do online. But I think when I say all these things, I should first acknowledge that I have left out, because that's not my area, the science and the arts. So I think there may be people, there are many, many people who are thinking seriously about what could be done about the science and the arts subjects, about humanities, about medicine, law, which is definitely not my area of expertise, so I can't speak anything about them. But it is different, and everything should be looked at from different perspectives. But before I end, I should say it's important to gather this, the narrative of the sufferers, of the patients, so that doctors are in a better position to collate what the problems are and come to a solution. So thank you. I'd like to acknowledge three of my friends who have helped in getting some of these things in place. And of course, I think you will agree, it's like the famous Simon and Garfunkel song, that teaching is not just teaching is not education, and studying is not learning. Education and learning goes beyond simple teaching and studying. So it's good that these questions are there and we are confronting these questions, and I'm sure that we will have a better idea about how to proceed in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for valuable lecture. Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
So now I request participants, please, if you have any queries, please write in chat box. Okay. Sir can answer one by one. Or you can unmute your audio.
I think if you have the control, then better to unmute one by one. Otherwise,
yes,
everyone.
anyone. Okay. Yes, sir. I have that control. Okay, sir. I am going through one by one.
I think sir is trying to say something which is not audible.
Yes. I want to connect with sir. Now he is not in. He left, sir, actually. Session.
So I can see if there are questions, if people write it on the chat, I can have a look. I'm on the chat.
Okay. Please, anyone want to ask?
There may not be questions, there may be comments.
Yes.
You may strongly disagree with what I have said. You may agree, you may disagree. I think that's important to create this narrative of the sufferers.
Sir, hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Can you say how much it is important to know the digital literacy at the present moment to minimum the gap of digital divide?
Of course, it goes without saying that digital literacy um, is kind of become mandatory.
Okay.
So for the younger generation, we all know that we grow up in an atmosphere, and atmosphere builds us up. So my daughter, who's about 8 years, will pick up these, intricacies about online interaction much more quickly than I do. So, say people who are above, 40 or 50, and who have not faced this, digital communication before, they are at a major disadvantage at this stage. It is thrust upon them that you have to do. So someone who might be a brilliant historian, brilliant teacher, I know of people like this, or maybe a brilliant mathematician, but very uncomfortable with the computer. Cannot, I feel, see, the moment I can see, at least I can see the screen here, I feel much more comfortable to talk. Prior to this, when I was, looking only at the screen, which I had prepared, and talking to people whom I can't see, that was so very difficult.
Right.
It was so digital literacy and acquaintance with this particular kind of literacy is something, okay, you know how to, handle the computer, what to do. Another is acquaintance.
Yeah.
How comfortable you are with this. That's also very important. How you become acquainted with that. You cannot demand from people who have been in a completely different mode for the last 30 years. Now, at the gunpoint, you have to become acquainted with this mode. So this will have a serious negative impact on education. So digital literacy, of course, is very important. There's no doubt about it. The coming generation cannot proceed without that. So it's literacy. It's literally literacy.
Right. And sir, one more question. Do you recommend Moodle for preparing the, teaching and learning for post-COVID scenario?
Now, what is that? I have no idea about Moodle.
Okay, Moodle is an online platform to where we can create classes and lectures with video and audio and all sorts of question and answer sessions, and make it interactive for the students.
I see. I have no idea. Sorry, I cannot comment. But I can say, so for example,
Okay.
Part-2, which I showed, they have some very interesting interfaces. For example, if you prepare a lecture and put it, online, and students are seeing that lecture, viewing that lecture, then the platform will give you some very interesting feedbacks. For example, it will tell you which part the students have continuously gone back, rewound, and listened to again. So this is the portion where the student cannot easily understand what you are saying, where you need to do a bit more. So these kind of information you get from the Part-2, I know. I'm not sure whether Google Classroom has this option. So there are many options which these platforms are coming up with, which can be of huge benefit in future.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I don't know about this. Well, maybe you could share some information about that with me.
Right now, I can say that Moodle is an open source software where we can use Big Blue button for video and different Big Blue. Yes.
Okay, yeah,
MWDN.
I got it. Good. Okay, thank you.
Sir Ray.
Yes.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Musharraf Hussain. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, Dr. Hussain, I can hear you.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. It's a nice presentation. Thank you for that. I'd like to, add one thing, and rather I would request you to focus on this. Regarding the physically, orthopedically, or visually challenges person, they are one of the sections who are also included in our learner.
Absolutely.
And how to meet to that problem also. in this online digital drift?
Well, thank you, Dr. Hussain, for raising this very important issue, which I realized that when I was talking of the different kinds of divide, that is one aspect which I have missed, and I should have included that. So thank you very much for pointing that out. But as an answer to your question, I would refer back to what I started with, that I am not the doctor. I am not an expert who can suggest what the alternatives are. And I'm sure that the experts now are also trying very, very hard to look at the solutions. But my motivation here was to pinpoint, find out, list, and prepare the discourse of the affected. Right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, this is a very, very important point. I cannot thank you enough. But
Actually, this point, I didn't think about it prior to this webinar, this lecture. So that also, your lecture has that kind of, success in thinking about that, making me think about this matter also. So that is one of the success of this webinar also. I think so.
So there are braille computers for the visually challenged, and that is I don't know how the access to braille computers are there, but there are organizations working on that particularly for visually challenged. A lot of work has been done in the last few decades on development of braille computers. For people with hearing challenges, there must be something which I'm completely unaware of. And I think for every such challenge, there must be a specific response, and there are people and experts probably working on it. If not, we need to do that. That's a very important question you have raised. Thank you.
I think our principal sir is now connected. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, no. Our principal sir, Dr. Nilanshu Shepard.
Dr. Das.
Yes, sir. You want to?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Please say something.
Am I audible?
Yes, Dr.
Yes,
Das,
sir.
I
You
can
are
hear you.
audible and visible.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I was listening your lecture from starting, and Professor Ray, what can I say? I've understood a lot from you. So many things is ushered a new era in my knowledge world. Actually, I didn't know so many things about online teaching or the problem which is going on and what we would have to face in future, what you suggested. So many questions you have raised, so many questions, and one very important thing in which I myself is included also, that people above 50 or 45 or 50 don't have any sufficient digital literacy. They are becoming useless day after day in these special situations.
Absolutely.
So, yes. So what you suggest? Till now we are in working position. A good number of teachers above 45, 50 who don't have any computer literacy or digital literacy or the tools know how to use the new tools for the online education purpose. So how we can update ourselves in a very short time to cope up with the present situations? What do you suggest?
Well, I think gaining some kind of confidence in handling digital devices rests solely on practice and nothing else. Just, if we have this confidence to deal, that's how I'm sure we all have these experiences of children, how they very, very quickly pick up, they become so conversant with all these digital platforms and devices. the reason is that they're not intimidated. The problem, especially with people like, people like us, because we already have a social status, that we are professors, we are, some important people, and our ignorance is not well taken by the society. So if I'm ready to face my ignorance and I just want to learn, so if I cannot deal with something, then there are several others who are much younger, who are my students, they might laugh because they are very, very conversant with it. So this kind of mind block, of course, we all know that this is completely stupid. So the more we get involved, the more we can shed our inhibitions and dissociate any kind of humiliation from the ignorance about the digital world. I mean, I'm sure that I also grew up at a time when we didn't have television in our house, right? And when I did my master's in Calcutta University, in Rajabajar Science College, that was the first time, I'll tell you a story, when I touched a computer. It was a computer in the roof, asbestos room with fully air-conditioned room was made. Only a couple of professors who were working computers, and we had to open our shoes before we could get in. We thought that if we sneeze, then the computers might have problems. So one of my friends, who is incidentally is a professor of computational physics in Rutgers University, I'll tell you a story. He was working with the computer, and one of our seniors said in Bangla, "Je enter mere beriye esho." So what he did was he pressed enter and walked out of the room. So we thoroughly laughed at that. But if we can ignore these things, then now Amit is a very well-known professor of computational physics now, dealing all with computers. So this happened when we were doing our masters, MSc in physics. So we grew up in that atmosphere. So if we can completely disregard these kind of, apparent and nonsensical humiliation, then learning is not a difficult issue. I know certain people like my father-in-law who started learning computer at the age of 75, and he knows, just, shed these inhibitions. That's the only thing. I'm sure that it's very simple. So learning this kind of digital literacy will come very on for people like us. But the problem is with people without access to these devices, without access to internet. So you don't give a person a pen and a paper and you ask them to know how to write. That is ridiculous. For people with access, I don't think it's a problem at all. People without access, it's a very serious problem. So that's my take on that. But yes, it's a serious problem. I agree with you, Dr. Das. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, anyone?
Hello. Hello. Hello, may I audible, sir?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Sir, myself, Orko Mondal from the University of Part-2. First of all, sir, I would like to say your session was very informative, and this session is very helpful for this scenario, which is COVID-19 now. Sir, I would like to know a suggestion or some motivational talk for a particular another topic. That is, from few days earlier in media that there was a news, 12 standard girl committed suicide, not for attending the digital class. Because of that, her parents are attending a digital class, but she could not attend it. So she committed suicide. So, sir, do you have any suggestion or motivational talk for those who cannot access this type of digital teaching learning process?
Well, this is such a serious issue. That's why the first 80% of my lecture I focused on the problems, and of course these problems are giving rise, where I kind of conclude, giving rise to several mental health issues. This is the incident that you referred to. I also read it in some online news. there are many professors who are also suffering from serious mental health issues under this kind of situation. So students as well as teachers. So this has given rise to this situation because we were suddenly thrust upon this. Well, I do not have any motivational speech. I'm not a motivator in that sense. I can motivate people, try to motivate people to physics, but not in general.
Any type of suggestion?
We can hope, what we can hope is if we can raise these kinds of, issues, these points very strongly and very firmly. We had 250 participants here, all over. Then that will create some discourse. People who are trying to unidirectionally pose or thinking may not always be with some ill motivation. If there is a strong presence of the alternative, then of course that will make a difference. So that is what we can do in order to stand beside these, suffering students and suffering teachers. We need to, articulate ourselves properly, raise the points properly, so that this wave of digital drift, the tornado of digital drift, can be resisted to an extent and put it in the right perspective. This is not to say that we should not go digital, no. But to put it in the right perspective, we need this kind of discourses. So that is why I'm really thankful to you for organizing this, conference and, allowing this kind of discussions.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes. My name is Dr. Suborna Kormakar. Thank you so much for this enlightened lecture. Really helpful. So I have a question. I was thinking that, it's very popular to going to foreign countries for education. So I was thinking that what will be the future, of education in foreign countries? Like many Indian students wants to go to abroad for education, higher education.
Thank you, Dr. Kormakar. I have seen your question. You have written it in the chat as well. So
Yeah.
I was, contemplating to address that. Well, the situation is very bad, right? The situation is very bad primarily because of the travel restrictions. So since you are teachers, I'm sure that there are many teachers who here also whose subjects are physics and chemistry, or maybe allied science subjects. Let me first tell you that if you have students who are interested in coming here and joining me at Mexico for their PhD program, please encourage those students to write to me. You have my email. I have a
Okay.
few PhD positions for aspiring students, 100 PhD positions, and there are many colleagues in US, UK, who are looking for good students. Because it's a two-way process. I think if I got your questions right, it's a two-way thing. First, students are fearing, aspiring students who want to go abroad for doing their PhD or, masters, whatever, or postdoc, many of them feel that post-COVID it will be difficult for them to go abroad. Might be. But at the
Yes.
same time, faculty members and professors here, they are thinking, because they used to get a large pool of students from India and China, very, very bright
Yeah.
students. So they are also afraid that their research, their activities will suffer because the student flow will get blocked. So I don't see right now that as a result of this lockdown, travel restrictions, right now no one can travel. But I don't know what will happen to the fund situation, because all these foreign assignments, they are dependent on how much fund we have. If we have fund to support students, I think when the travel restrictions are withdrawn, there will again be inflow of students from India and China for sure. Travel restrictions is something which we do not have any control over. As I'm saying, that I have positions. I had send in some advertisements, but I have not got any response till now. So we are looking for students, bright students who want to come here. So that's perfectly open. But in the long run, if funds dry, a lot of things can happen because everything, economy has suffered. So then we are for a complete, I don't know what different world. That is something unpredictable.
We have to wait for 1 year, I guess.
Right. But as of now, if there's anyone who's interested in joining foreign universities, you know, just ask them to shoot in their application.
Okay.
I personally looking for students in
My subject is sociology. So I have, I don't know many people regarding physics and chemistry, but I will let them know. Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's for everyone. So, but these positions are still open.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone? Actually, we staying with. Hello.
So it's already 9:30 there.
Yes, sir. We extended our meeting almost 1 hour. It is a good session, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Anyone?
Thank you.
Anyone?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So today we are going to stop the session. We meet tomorrow. Thank you all the participants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, please. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please join tomorrow as early as possible. I am very sorry for the first session. I don't know what